The roar of the engines, the smell of burning rubber, and the thrill of the race. Formula One has provided some of the most spectacular and memorable moments in motorsport history, from nail-biting finishes to shocking crashes. These are the 10 craziest moments in F1 history that will leave you breathless. Number 10. Michael Schumacher and Jacques Villeneuve, Spain, 1997. When any modern F1 fan thinks of Michael Schumacher, they probably have a painted picture of an idealistic driver, team-oriented, well-rounded and consistent. Schumacher is all of those things, but he's still a human being. In his decades-long career, there were times where Schumacher's moral compass was brought into question. There hasn't been a moment that highlighted a dark side to Michael Schumacher like the 1997 Spanish Grand Prix. In this race, Michael undoubtedly crossed a line that many would never have expected from a legend of his caliber. Heading into the final race of the 1997 F1 season with the Spanish GP, young Canadian driver Jacques Villeneuve was giving Schumacher a pretty tough time, and it all came down to this race. Schumacher and Villeneuve were close in points, but Michael was willing to risk it all to secure the championship. Even before the race, many speculated that he would attempt a dangerous move against Villeneuve. Sure enough, Schumacher tried to cause an intentional collision against his rival, but was unsuccessful. And that caused him to be summoned by the FIA, who ultimately disqualified him from the championship. Number 9. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, Abu Dhabi 2021. Even speaking about this race brings up some mixed feelings. In a season that gave us some of the most beautiful racing we've seen, there's no doubt that fans enjoyed the amazing racecraft and pace shown between these two. With everyone putting their best foot forward, the final race seemed like the right place to determine who was best between these two close drivers. Equal on points with everything to lose, Hamilton and Verstappen had an action-packed finale to conquer. For the first 50-plus laps, Hamilton seemed to be on track to win the race. Mercedes and their car development was rapidly improved, and Abu Dhabi was a track that highly favored the Silver Arrows. During the final laps of the race, where everything began to shape up nicely for Mercedes, a late race crash induced the release of a safety car. In this moment, Hamilton kept his lead while lapped cars were allowed to pass the safety car. With one final lap to race, Red Bull took advantage of the safety car to get fresher tires. Due to unclear communications on the rules, Mercedes wasn't able to get fresh tires, leading to an awful season ender. But the first championship for Max Verstappen in a new era of Grand Prix racing. Number 8. Felipe Massa and Lewis Hamilton, 2008 Brazilian Grand Prix. The 2008 F1 season is the stuff of legends. A moment where Brazil's Felipe Massa seemed guaranteed to earn his first Formula One championship. Many were quick to celebrate during the race's final laps. None could have imagined that it would have a plot twist that will shock the entire racing world. Even Massa's family began celebrating early prior to the shock news. But what actually transpired? Well, Hamilton was 7 points ahead of Massa coming into the final race, which meant that the ball was really in Massa's court to secure the championship. All that he had to do was finish first, while Lewis finished in 6th place or lower. Interestingly enough, this plan actually worked out until rain began to thwart Massa's dreams of a championship. Lewis was in 6th place sure enough, but the driver ahead of him couldn't find any grip in the wet weather, leading to a crash, and Hamilton moving up a place. The rest is history. Number 7. Senna's pole lap, 1988 Monaco Grand Prix. In the 1988 season, Senna showed off some of the most brilliant scenes in racing history. There's no performance that highlights this like the Monaco GP pole lap he provided. This is essentially F1's biblical lap. Even today, fans and paddock members alike will reference it as a benchmark. Senna and Prost's rivalry was certainly still in full swing coming into this race, but Senna was truly committed to coming out on top. In this qualifying season, Senna pulled out a pace that was clearly beyond the car's capabilities. Many even referenced this as a spiritual level of speed. For fans who witnessed it, we are sure that this moment stays fresh in their memories even today. Senna even ended up coming in at 1.427 seconds ahead of his championship rival with this qualifying session. He described it like being in a different dimension where the circuit was essentially a tunnel. Talk about legendary. Number 6. 2005 US Grand Prix. You know it's a serious moment when there are no drivers that highlight the insanity of this moment. The 2005 US GP on its own is quite crazy enough If you're not aware, this moment is considered one of F1's most questionable. Coming into the race, Michelin was responsible for the type compounds for many of the teams. However, their tires were not suitable for a high-speed turn 13 at Indianapolis. This meant that they had to compromise by installing a chicane. All teams had to agree, and Ferrari refused. The implication? Only 6 cars got to start the race. Of course, this was also Ferrari's best result for the year. With 6 cars on track, fans were rightfully upset at the FIA, and it was considered to be an embarrassment for the sport. Number 5. Nigel Mansell, 1992 British Grand Prix. Scoring a Grand Chelem in Formula 1 is a holy grail of the sport. Sure, championships are amazing, but even some champions have been unable to dominate a weekend on this level during illustrious careers. In 1992, Mansell was the guy to watch out for. Sure, other iconic drivers like Michael Schumacher, Damon Hill, and Mika Hakkinen were there in the race, but they were more like cubs compared to Mansell coming into the weekend. In a total show of dominance, Nigel won the pole position, led every single lap during the race, and even got the fastest lap. What could any rival possibly say or do in defiance to that level of skill? Mansell showed the world that in Formula 1, there are weekends where you need to remind the competition that there are levels to this. Number 4. The return of Niki Lauda, the 1976 Italian Grand Prix. When a driver like Lauda is mentioned in Formula 1, a deep reverence fills the air. He's not just a legend because he raced in the 60s and 70s. No, Niki did something most people wouldn't dare to do. He came back to race. If you're unaware, a dangerous crash from a few weeks earlier rendered Niki on life support. With burns around his face and his lungs ruined from the smoke, you would expect that Niki would have been making proper preparations for his retirement. But no, this absolute legend returned to racing 6 weeks after a priest read him his last rites. On his return driving for Ferrari at the Italian GP, he was able to finish in 4th place, a spectacular result from an amazing driver. A true phoenix reborn. Number 3. Jensen Button's unexpected victory, 2011 Canadian Grand Prix. At the 2011 Canadian GP, McLaren teammates Lewis Hamilton and Jensen Button were well into the depths of a complicated season and rivalry. Things weren't helped when the pair crashed into each other, leading to Button receiving a penalty. Meanwhile, his luck was further ruined when he tapped Alonso's Ferrari, receiving a puncture and getting shot down into the back of the field. At a point, he was even close to being lapped by Vettel. Still, Button persevered and began to weave his way through the pack, hunting down other drivers and taking advantage of a sound tire strategy. He swept past drivers like Michael Schumacher and Mark Webber, eventually getting in the front of pack with Vettel in the lead. A costly error from Vettel saw Button come out ahead and take home the victory. It was a race that showed the true spirit of racing. Anything can truly happen at any time. Number 2. David Coulthard, 1998 Belgian Grand Prix. Rain is the ultimate leveler in Formula 1. You can have the fanciest car or the worst donkey to pilot, but in the rain, every man begins to fight an individual battle. It's not only a test of your racecraft, but also a driver's mental strength. In Belgium 1998, there is no driver that was as disappointed in the day's race as David Coulthard. With the rain heavily sweeping through the track, Coulthard lost control of his McLaren and caused a mass collision that effectively ended what would have been an iconic race. 13 other drivers crashed out. After an hour, the track was cleared and drivers went back to race. Of course, this moment came with another incident that put a final nail in the coffin for this race. Number 1. Michael Schumacher, 1995 Belgian Grand Prix. The Belgian GP is no stranger to iconic moments for this sport, and 1995 is no different. In this race weekend, Michael was unable to activate his usual spark. His botched qualifying session saw him coming home in 16th place. After that, he had to climb his way through the entire field during the race. The weather came in handy for Schumacher as the potential for rain began to increase. Naturally, other drivers didn't want to take the risk of staying out, so they pitted. Meanwhile, Schumacher stayed pitted out on the track with slick tires, holding off Damon Hill and eventually passing him for the win when the track was fully dry. Moments like these solidify why Schumacher was such an amazing driver for the sport. His daredevil mentality earned him 7 championships, and many drivers today have kept the spirit alive in F1. These are our top 10 craziest moments in F1. Do you agree with our picks? Tell us in the comments below. And if you want to learn how to drive an F1 car, Be sure to click on our next video for a realistic guide.